Hello and welcome to Surveyor Says, the podcast from the National Society of Professional Surveyors. Each week, we bring you fascinating guests that are involved in the profession of surveying. We cover a lot of ground, including Table A Talk with Gary Kent, Point of Order with the NSPS Joint Government Affairs Team, Future Focus, highlighting current and future leaders of the profession, and everything survey-related in between. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Surveyor Says. Hello, welcome to another episode of Surveyor Says. This is going to be a couple-part feature. We have the NSPS Certified Survey Technician Board in-house this week. It's their quarterly meeting. They go through the tests that have been done through the last quarter. They review questions. They look at statistics. They figure out ways to manipulate that test to make it as hard as possible. No, not really. Not really. So we've got a few members of the board here. So first we'll start with Nick. Just give us a little intro, a little bio to who Nick is and why you participate in this board. I mean, it's all volunteers. We'll get to hear the volunteer story of everybody, but tell us a little bit about you.
Name's Nick DeGrudelo, and I started surveying right after high school and went up through the CST program to a level 4 field supervisor, and then decided to go back to school and went back, got the bachelor's degree and got licensed, and continued on with school to get a master's and PhD in geomatics from the University of Florida, and participated in my local state society. And when the CST Board was meeting in Florida, we went to visit with them, and I ended up on the board.
Oh, that's nothing like getting volunteered for stuff, right? Well, good. What I guess in your time on the board, what have you experienced, and what do you look forward to on working with the fellow board members?
I think the biggest reason that I joined is I think that I can help with the modernization, keeping everything relevant and fresh. And I think just since I've been on the board for the last year and a half or so, I think we've actually accomplished quite a bit of that.
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, next up, we'll run around the table to Mr. Don Falcon. Don is a long-timer.
Yes.
Quite a long-timer. So what? Tell us your story, Don.
So I came to Washington, D.C. in the early to mid 90s, and I was working for the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, which I've been the chief surveyor at for the last 35 years. When I first came here to town, I was looking for establishing standards for equipment, procedures, and personnel. And I could find national standards for equipment and procedures, but I couldn't find a national standard for personnel qualifications. I read an article written by Bob Moynihan about the CST program, and I made a call, and I inquired as to how I could possibly use it to improve the quality of the people that were working on metro subway construction projects. And shortly thereafter, I adopted the requirement, or suggested to Metro to adopt that requirement, to hire certified survey technicians on all construction projects, as well as design and any survey-related contract that Metro had. So in 1994, I ended up, acquiring my CST level 3 and 4. I joined the board, and I've been on the board ever since. And I've enjoyed working with other surveyors from around the country, sharing ideas and promoting the program with the idea that we're creating a pool of qualified technicians for the profession.
Very good. Well, and you're in a unique situation to where you do have your CST, and I guess tell us a little bit about what value having that credential in addition to your professional credentials kind of puts it all together. Really, it's a really nice full package to be able to prove to not just an employer but to the public and private firms that we're working with.
Well, I had heard so many problems about people passing an exam, and I had to prove to myself that a person like myself could do it. And so I took the steps to pass those 2 exams, just to prove that I could come up through the ranks, which I had. And then it was actually a nice stepping stone to licensure later on in life. So it proved that I could, and therefore anybody else could, do the same thing. And so I encourage surveyors to acquire credentials to advance their career.
Exactly. Well, very good. Well, last gentleman at the table, Mr. Ryan Swingley, kind of one of the newbies, but been around a little bit. So tell us a little bit about you and how you got interested in joining this merry band of pirates.
Yeah, so Ryan Swingley, I've been surveying for 25 years now, I guess. I've always been heavily involved in our state society and trying to get advocate for technicians and education and things like that. And Art Hayes was one of my mentors and educator. And he was heavily involved in CST, so through his encouragement, I decided this was a good opportunity for me to get more involved in NSPS and CST. So I've been on the board. This is my second 3-year term on the board. It's been fun so far. These are a good group of guys, and we have a good time. So.
Well, and you mentioned Art Hayes. Got to shout out to Art. I mean, years of his dedication on the board and really brought it to where it is today. And it's really looking positive, and even for the future. I think under his leadership, it really came together quite nicely, and it's really set up well for the future. So, tell you what, I'll stick with you, Ryan. Last couple of days you've been here in the NSPS office. You guys, what's a typical board meeting look like for this group, and what do you usually go through?
Well, yeah, we typically grade the exams. We go through any challenges, and we have in this particular meeting went through a goal setting session to identify what we're going to do with the future. One of the major tasks that we've been working on since I got on the board was getting our question database into a new format. Through that was challenging to concatenate all the questions into one essentially Excel sheet. We took and went through a series of reviews of questions and eliminated a substantial amount of questions, edited questions, and then got that into Scantron database for our new testing format. We thought that was going to take more years than it did, and it went a little quicker than we had hoped, so we're ahead of schedule. And that gives us an opportunity through this goal setting session now to focus on some more outreach to our CST members, do a little bit more marketing at the governmental and business level. And then, training is a really big talking point for us. We would like to create some additional training material, maybe video-based as a delivery method to assist CSTs in their success rate, but also ensure that our technicians are trained on everything they need to know.
Very good, exactly. Well, and Don, I'm going to slide right back over to you since you've been here on the board for a while. I mean, it evolved into something that was on Blackboard through Vincennes University, and modernizing this test and going through these steps that Ryan just laid out, that getting it transferred over to Scantron, going through those questions. I mean, you've been around long enough that you saw the evolution of some of these questions. What has that process been like, going back through and going, is this really relevant anymore, and what do we need to add?
Well, that's a great question. We have been on a campaign to improve the quality of the questions, also modernize them. And so it's been fun to see how the industry has changed, because, from old equipment to new equipment and the use of new technology to perform the services that surveyors need to provide to the industry. So just the exercise of writing those questions, doing the research on the technology, and this effort to modernize the exam has been a real rewarding experience. And I also just want to add one little thing that really captured my interest in the program earlier. I know that we talked about that before, but this was the only program that I could find in the United States that recognized the value of construction surveyors and give them credentials, whereas most of the industry is focused on boundary and land surveying. This program recognized the value of construction surveyors to the industry, so I just wanted to add that.
Oh, exactly. And Nick, back around to you as far as in this modernization. I think that's one thing that in watching this board operate and putting things together, that I really feel like that's something you're bringing to the table, is modernizing these questions on really how the questions need to be applicable to today's surveyors, rather than worrying about chain sag and a few other things. I mean, you're deep enough into the industry, you understand where these technicians need to be tested on.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of discussion about that, and it's interesting that the variety of people we have on the board, we don't just have one opinion and we all agree and move on. We have a lot of deep discussion about where we should be going with this, and I believe in modernizing everything and being up to date and getting rid of obsolete parts of the test, but then there's a lot of it that still needs to be on there. I mean, it's going to be in a degree program if you were going to continue on, and some of that stuff might be moved to history, but it's still stuff that we got to keep on there.
Exactly. Well, I'll be cognizant of your time. I know you've still got a lot of board work to do here, but one thing I do want to stress is the fact that this is a volunteer board. So, Nick, if you want to, I shouldn't put you on the spot, but I'm going to anyway. Really, anybody you want? I mean, employer, people that are backing you to be here, you want to shout out to that because you are here on your time, and while the board helps with travel arrangements and things like that, it's still your time and your time commitment to put in here. So, if there's employers or even family that are backing you to do this, I mean, here's an opportunity to just say, shout out to them and say thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Pickett and Associates, my employer, they encourage us to be participating and involved in our state societies and things like this, and they support me fully to attend these board meetings.
Well, very good. Don, you've already said you're a longtime Metro guy. That anybody you want to give a little shout out to?
Well, my organization has really supported my time away from the office to help improve this program, and every one of my supervisors or managers have been behind me every inch of the way. So it's been a no-brainer to have me participate in this, because it's good for the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, it's good for NSPS, it's good for Don Falcon, and it's good for our technicians. I believe that I represent that engineering survey crowd, or the industrial surveying crowd, or the construction crowd, and so I'm a voice for all of them on this board.
Well, and I'll give a little shout out to your employer as well, because it's always fun to go to DC to do our lobby day things or whatever, and seeing all the monuments you guys have set all over the district. I mean, it's amazing how much control you all have set through the district and beyond.
We have over 10,000 monuments, 5,000 on the surface and another 5,000 underground.
Wow, incredible.
Pretty amazing.
Incredible. Last but not least, Mr. Swingley.
ESP Associates is my employer. They're very good, like Nick said, about giving me the freedom to travel and participate in things that are for the good of the profession. Of course, my wife, Sarah, is at home with our 4 children, so I would be remiss if I didn't make sure I indicated that she was a great help in allowing me to do these things. So, and then NES Society Professional Surveyors. I mean, they're behind my back 100%. So, there to support me and support this board and support CST all the way. So it's been great to see those individuals and companies and organizations get behind something.
Exactly. And as a fellow podcaster, little shout out to your podcast.
The Hoosier Surveyor Podcast. Yeah, we kind of created it just pretty much for outreach to our members. It seems like communication through newsletters and things like that just doesn't reach your target audience as much as you want, and so we started the podcast, if nothing else, just to get information out to people. It's another material that they could use as communication. So it's been fun, and I don't understand the electronic equipment. I'm just there as the talker.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's usually pretty easy for me. So.
No, that's okay. And I'm behind a couple episodes, but I'm for those listeners out there, I'm really interested in listening to the Gary Kent episode.
Yeah. That's if there's one that I think I would like for everyone to get out there is the discussion with Gary Kent, and we don't go into Alta standards. We talk about Gary's life all the way back to elementary school. So.
He's a fascinating guy.
Absolutely.
So, well, very good. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll catch up with your other contemporaries on the board, but thank you from NSPS, all of its members, for all of the hard work that this board does, and we can't thank you enough for the long hours and effort to put this together, because it really is guiding the technicians into a better career. So thank you all. Hello, I'm back with the second group of victims from the CST Board. This is Tim Burch, your host, and the Certified Survey Technician Board has been visiting us here in our Frederick office for their spring quarterly meeting to go over testing and doing all the board duties that we've covered with the other group. But we'll talk about this group and see what they've got going on as far as their participation in this. So I'll start with you, Mr. Randy Rambo. I've known Randy for several years as a former director from North Carolina, and glad you've stayed on the board. But so, Randy, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got on the board, and really what is it that you like about being on the board as a volunteer?
Well, surveyed for 50 years. I started out at the bottom as a rodman on the survey crew. Worked my way up, got my license in North Carolina way back in 1978. Previously, I guess my last employer was a 30-year stint with McKim McCreed as an office manager in the Raleigh office. Served 8 years as the NSP director for North Carolina, which was most enjoyable time. It was great meeting folks from all over the country. Really enjoyed that stint. During that time, I did express some interest in the CST board because my company was very involved with CST and supported it in multiple offices in multiple states, and was fortunate enough to go to a summer meeting up in Vincennes, and they agreed to let me serve on the board, and so I've been a board member since, I believe, either 2015 or 2016.
I was going to say it has been quite a while, and I know the board has kind of grown around you, which we really appreciated your time on. Mr. Ron, you're next. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and you're another one like Don Falcon, a long timer. And tell us about the board, and really from your perspective also how it's changed over the time that you've been involved.
Oh, now you're making it difficult.
Oh, of course, of course.
I'm from Washington State. I was licensed in 1974, and I've always been involved in public service and organizations. And I got involved with NSPS, and I was an NSPS Area 10 director. And in 1985, discussions about the Survey Tech Committee was mentioned, and I was one of the founding members on that board and have stayed active on that board since then. I've served in many different jobs in my career, but always in the Washington State area. And I believe firmly in the CST Board. And how it's changed is when we started, we had nothing. We had a blank slate with no questions, not anything to go by. So over the years, we've created the exams, and now we're to the point where recreating new questions and coming up with questions and topics that are very specific to the profession now.
Yes, that's what we talked about with the last group, was how things are evolving and how we're going back and changing really questions that don't apply to what we're doing anymore. I kidded about the chain sag and things like that, and really being able to look at new technology and some of the things that really apply more to today's technicians than it did before. So, and I want to come back around to that. Let's introduce Miss Trish, and as a somewhat newbie on the board, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got interested in being on the CST board, and what you're looking forward to getting out of this experience.
Sure. So, being from Texas, I've been actively engaged in our state society since 1992. Been in this industry 30 years now. I've always been involved on the education side and have a very strong feelings about student chapters, student members, those types of things. I've previously been an adjunct professor in those things. So I was one of our former past presidents for NSPS, Amanda, asked me if I wanted to be on the board. I said yes, I would love to come meet with everybody. I was invited to sit down and kind of see what everybody was doing and what the board was about, and it really opened my eyes to what my perception of what CST was not what it really is. Mm-hmm. And how dedicated and how motivated they are to constantly update the material, to constantly look for new avenues, to introduce CST into business entities, governmental entities, to use it for scoring methods, all of those types of things. And there's a lot more that goes into CST than just testing. And I'm a big advocate of, if you don't introduce people young in their early part of their career, not that you want to disregard anybody further along in their career, but if you don't introduce them early and give them a path to work for and a path to move forward, then our profession's not going to advance.
Oh, exactly. No, well stated. And I guess let me stick with you for a second, being one of the newbies to the group, and one that I would say in watching your career path and seeing how involved you've been in Texas at TSPS and past president, and very, very active and interested in moving this program forward, making it more relevant to the technicians these days. And I like what you said about don't disregard the old guard. I mean, there's still things to learn, but there is so much more technology and other aspects that the technicians really need to concentrate on, and this test should somewhat reflect those disciplines.
Absolutely. I work a lot with the high schools. In Texas, we have 5 different high schools that have survey programs, that they come out of high school with different certifications. We've introduced the CST Level 1 as a assessment tool for them to utilize. And so keeping that updated and engaging to the young students is something that's important. It's also important to maintain to be relative in our industry. While I think it's important to understand where we came from and the footsteps, and we should know what chaining corrections are. Today's technician doesn't need to know that, but they need to know more about LiDAR. They need to know more about drones. They need to know more about different technologies and the different tools that we have as surveyors in our toolbox. So I think that we just went through a major overhaul, and it's of all of our exam questions. But that's something that we do every time we meet, is we review those questions and we continue to update those and add new topics to our work elements.
Well, that's great. No, that's awesome. And a shout out to Texas and the high schools. A shout out to the Klein Collins High School that just recently competed in our NSPS student competition. As a high school, they competed at the associate level and they got third place, which for a high school is fantastic. So shout out to Klein Collins High School. And I think you had a little bit to do with some of those, didn't you?
Sometimes. My former employer, Gracia Geomatics, and Isidro Garza, he spends a lot of company resources, volunteer, that he does at that school, and it's a really great thing he does.
Well, and that's part of practicing what you preach, and that's that right there is proof that good things can come out of it. Ron, I want to come back around to you because we're talking about this evolution of the CST test. Let's be honest. Let's go back to the mid to late '80s. Not a lot of personal computers out there. Not a lot of computing power. I imagine a lot of this stuff had to be simply paper based, and it was hard to manipulate and hard to compile all of this information for this test.
Absolutely. When we started creating the test, everything was paper. Trig tables, computation tables, some logarithms, which no one even understands anything about that anymore. But now we've come full circle, and very small laptops and computers, and so we've had to incorporate that technology, especially the newer technology, into our programs, and it's a whole learning curve for everyone. And so getting those types of questions into the exams has been challenging. One of the main points is technicians to understand what they're doing.
Right.
And that's a real important part of their profession, knowing what they're doing.
Oh, exactly. And it's not all about the technology itself. We try to stress that the UAVs, and these are all tools. It's understanding what they're doing, not necessarily what they are. I always try to tell people, I know what a hammer can do. It's just a matter of, am I capable of doing it? It's not about the tool. It's about the exercise itself. Randy, I want to come back around to you because you did mention a little shout out to your former employer as a retired surveyor now. You were very involved with the CST program at a company level. And that's one thing I guess I've always appreciated about your old firm, in that how much the company really encouraged the employees there to take on the CST, and the value of what that certification meant to not just the company, but to the employee themselves.
Exactly. We did encourage the employees to pursue the CST by paying for exam fees, paying application fees, offering the exam in our offices, various offices across the Southeast, at least twice a year. We had PLSs who were willing to donate time on Saturdays or at nights if we had technicians that were willing to come in and do some studying and review some subjects and so forth. We also offered bonuses to the employees for each level of the CST that they passed. I told employees, this is something you take with you. It's not something you leave here. All you have to do is show the initiative and show the desire that you want to learn and advance, and we will provide that opportunity.
Well, exactly. And it's having that type of attitude to go along with the test, and having those immediate supervisors that are really there to help promote and to encourage those those technicians, young and old, to want to go out and pursue these things. So, well, we appreciate all the time you put into the board, and that's one thing we do want to definitely stress. We did with the first group, and now with you as well, that this is all volunteer time. And while yes, the board does help with some travel expenses and such, your time is still your time, and the fact that you're willing to give up a few days to help push along a program that's very, very important to this profession. The association thanks you, the members thank you, and I thank you. I know Ron and Randy, you're both retired, so I guess maybe a little shout out to your significant others to say thank you for allowing you to come here for a little bit. If there's anybody you want to shout out to.
Well, I would say on that vein, my wife Joyce, we've been married over 50 years now, and throughout my 50 years in surveying, she has never hindered me from taking part in whatever outside activities I wanted to take part in as far as the profession goes. You know, she supported me through being active in the North Carolina Society of Surveyors and NSPS and the CST Board as well. And so, and my past employers have been very supportive as well. So it has given me a great opportunity. It's a time that I have greatly enjoyed both at NSPS and here on the CST Board. So. Well,
we appreciate them letting us have you for that time. It's been very, very good. Ron, what about you?
Well, I'll shout out my wife Jan for enabling me to come to these meetings and supporting me in my continuing desire to keep our profession growing. And technicians, I've always felt, are such a key part of our profession. Without them, we're lost.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Jan. Thanks for letting us have Ron from time to time. And Trish, what about you?
Obviously, all of my employers, I currently work for Whitman Land Group. I appreciate him allowing me to come spend time. But before we go, I'd like to make a challenge.
Let's have it. Oh, I love it. Let's have it.
I would like to challenge any existing CST technician that would be willing to give feedback and assistance to the board with some of our new initiatives, such as the training program that we are starting, and some of our outreach programs. If you reach out to any of your local CST board member, or any of the board members really, but I would challenge them to do that.
Well, very good. Well, and thanks to your family and your employers for letting us have you for these times, because it's like I keep stressing, and I don't think we can overstate the volunteering efforts to put all this together. And I would hate to add up all of the hours and days that have been volunteered for this board. It would probably be mind-boggling the amount of time that's going into here. So before you want to criticize a test in the process, think about how long it's taken to put all these things together and what it truly means. So, but thank you all for being here. Thank you for your dedication, and we look forward to bigger and brighter things for the CST board right down the line. All right, we've got our last group of guests from the CST Certified Survey Technician Board visiting us here in the NSPS office this week. We've got Norm Ellerbrock, the current chair of the CST Board, and a special guest. He laughs because I call him a special guest, Mr. Bob Moynihan, a longtime member of the CST Board. And you know what, Bob, let's just start with you, because of the history that you bring and the depth you've brought to this board. I really want our listeners to understand what this thing started with, what the original intentions were, and how this thing is just continuing to evolve into a really great program.
Thanks. I'm a licensed engineer and land surveyor, retired. Taught at the University of New Hampshire as well for 37 years. And in that process, I was involved with ACSM, obviously, many years ago. And in 1986, we started the CST program from scratch. Ron Torrance, who's also here today, was another member at that time. And so in those years, we had tried to develop the program to the point where it would mainly recognize the contribution that technicians provide to the profession, and by professionals, and also to give those technicians a sense that they have a career, they have an opportunity to advance, they have a credential, they have the ability to improve themselves in their career and find enjoyment, as we've all found in our professions.
Exactly. Well, we appreciate the all of the effort, and we were just kidding with the last group that if we go back and if we really think about the minutes and the hours and the days that have been spent on this program over the course of this time, it would be a staggering amount of time. That it's been a lot. And a special shout out to for our listeners that this is the man that educated three very good friends of mine, Rick Howard, Mark Sargent, and Jim Sens. I don't know how well they were as students, but they've turned out to be pretty good professionals. So tip of the hat to you, sir, for bringing three great minds to our surveying profession. Mr. Ellerbrock, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I own a small firm in Hannibal, Missouri. I've been surveying for 30 plus years. We concentrate mainly on boundary surveying, love it. And you got me interested I've always been interested in the CST program. You put out a plea years ago for help, and I responded, and I'm still here. And now chair.
It's all my fault.
All your fault, that's right.
Now, so I guess tell us a little bit about what when you first were exposed to the survey, the CST board, and you saw what went on. I guess what was the enticement to want to jump in and be as be as energetic as you've been in the things you've helped get done with this board?
Well, it's mainly just, I think our job as professionals is to bring our people up. And the CST program is a way to build our employees up. And so I try and do my best to take care of my people, and I see this as a huge benefit for those people. And everything we can do to promote this and get more people involved, I think it's better for the industry, for the profession.
Exactly. No, I would agree. And I guess in a quick reflection, as this, you're the last group coming through and talking to the entire board. I mean, there's a lot of depth and a lot of breadth of the experience that every one of the members of this board brings. But the one thing that really kind of stands out to me with every one of you is that it's not what I would call any of you are really old school. You're still looking forward. You're still looking at ways to make this not just the certification and that testing process better, but to make the actual CST, make to that technician better by providing good material. So I guess, Bob, I want to bring it back around to you and how this test, I mean, obviously over the course of time it's evolved. I mean, it started on paper, a lot of handwork on a lot of things, and then it eventually evolved into some computers, eventually evolved into Blackboard with Vincennes, and now we're evolving it even further into something we're doing in-house with Scantron. What has that been like, changing the technology within the program in addition to trying to stay relevant within teaching the technicians?
Well, when you think about 1990s technology, both office and field, versus what it is today, you get a sense of what a change there's been and what we've had to kind of operate in that environment. When we started, the idea of the fax machine was phenomenal.
Yes.
Just to give you an impression. And hand calculators were what everyone used. So we moved quite a bit from there, and we've tried to make sure that the tests reflected that change as we moved along. The technology has improved significantly. The amount of knowledge that a technician has to have in the office versus in the field today versus even 5 to 7 years ago is quite a bit different. And so the board has to, because most are practicing and they're staying involved in the profession, we're able to kind of keep the questions and the challenging information that we expect them to know at the level they need to know. We do hear that there are too many old questions sometimes, but the program has a whole section in survey history and survey types, and that's where those questions will be. You won't find them in the questions in field operations today because that's not involved. So we've tried to keep up to date that way, and I think it's been a challenge. Technology has moved quite a ways in the last 40 years.
Oh, absolutely. And well, and it is good to have some of that that history still built into it, because whether today's technicians want to believe it or not, they're going to come across old deeds. They're going to come across old records that they're going to need to know some of these things. And what's a rod? What's a perch? What's a vera? What's some of these other things? They're going to need to know that one way or another, or at least know where to find it. So I like that it isn't completely shutting the door on the history and just making it all the high-tech stuff, because I think there does need to be a very good balance with that. Norm, one of the things that we've talked about ad nauseum is the necessity for training for the technicians, because we're evolved with our technology. Obviously, we've gotten away from definitely not 3-man crews, and a lot of times it's not even 2-man crews anymore. That it's here, take this robot, take this GNSS receiver, take this laser scanner, go out on your own with little to no experience sometimes and figure it out, do it. So my point is that in the training for the CST, I think you're onto something about building some of that training that goes into that is just not being provided anymore.
Yeah, we've been really looking hard at that the last 6 months maybe. The amount of calls and emails I get about where can I get training, where can I find out how to learn more about this, all this stuff. It's getting there's a lot more interest in that, and so we're trying to up our game and develop some more material for everybody to utilize to get the education they need to be able to pass the CST. And so it's kind of a challenge right now.
Well, exactly, and developing curriculum to be able to do that, and to be honest with you, to make it to where it's interesting enough to grab somebody's attention to want to learn more about it. That's the other part, because I remember back to my school days, and if it could have been love math, but if I had a dry teacher and dry material, it was of no interest. So yeah, the board definitely has their work cut out for them, because the profession itself is very interesting, but if the storyteller is dull, you're not going to want to listen to the next chapter. So Bob, anything that you would like to see this board try to accomplish, in the near future? What are some of the goals that you see this board having going forward?
Well, I think that the development of some kind of training material is certainly an important aspect. The difficulty I think people need to realize is the range of learning knowledge that someone that starts at level 1 hired in 2 months ago or 3 months ago, what that person knows and can do computationally and as well as information about the profession is so much different than somebody that's been in it for 7, 8, 10 years and is sitting down for a level 3 exam. So it's really a challenge for the board to make the questions applicable, which we can do. But the problem is the training. Most people think in a day or 2 days, you can prep me to take level 1. And we're saying, no, not even level 1 can be developed. You need to know your math, you need to know trig, you need to know your algebra a little bit, you need to know units and how to use a book and how to look up things and have a set of equations. So it's a challenge. I think the training is going to be a challenge, but we need to do it.
Well, agreed. Norm, any goals that you have set as the chair for the short and even midterm? Who knows what kind of technology we're going to be up against in the next 5 years, much less beyond that. But what do you think the CST board and this program can accomplish in the short term?
Boy, that's a good question.
Well, that's why they pay me the big bucks.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, I just quadrupled everybody's salary today.
Oh,
so,
that's fantastic. That's great.
I don't know. Like I said, that's a really good question. Just trying to keep the content relevant, up to date, fresh, and try and get people to understand what we're all about. I'd say that's probably the biggest thing right now. Get everybody to understand what we're doing, what we're about, and hopefully get them to understand that, hey, this is a great thing and I want to be a part of it.
Oh, exactly. And I think yes, you've answered the question. What I would say is quite full, because it is such a quick and rapid, short attention span world, and if you don't grab somebody's attention on what we're doing right away, you'd lose the interest and they move on to something else. That and I guess that was the beauty of sitting and talking to the entire board today. I can look across the table and see the passion of the career that shine in every board member, and that's pretty typical of surveyors in general. And it's hard to sometimes sell that to a high school student, a young college student, whatever, that's looking for a career, and you're telling them about the stuff that we're going to be doing. So I agree. It's going to be a challenge on putting that content out there in a fashion that's going to grab them and won't let them go. So. Well, gentlemen, thank you both for taking some time to do this. I do want to take a moment here, and I want to thank Mr. Moynihan that you have been so dedicated to this program for such a long time, and there's been some significant contributions. I did a little shout out earlier to Art Hayes, the past chair. Under his leadership, there was. This program made a lot of strides. It made huge strides, especially bringing it into more into the computer age with Blackboard, with Vincennes University, and he did a lot. But with you sitting here, it's nice to be able to look you in the eye and just say thank you, because I know and I've seen the work that you've put in all this time. And even now, as technically an alternate to the board, you're still hammering away at a lot of this and really making sure that some of this training stuff is going to happen. And so thank you from NSPS, its members, from all of us, and myself especially, that I get it. I see how much you've been dedicated to this, and just absolutely thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, that'll do it. Guys, any parting shots that you have? Norm?
I actually have one. I want to echo what you just said about Bob. I mean, so we made this transition from Vincennes to Scantron. If it wasn't for the effort that Bob put into this over the past year, we would not be where we are today. He's an alternate, part-time. He's anything but part-time.
He's anything but part-time.
He has done an outstanding job. He is a great leader behind the scenes. I only hope one day I can grow up to be like him.
Yeah, exactly. So also, thank you to your wife, your family, your grandkids, everybody that has let us have you for not an insignificant amount of time over the years with CST, because the program is where it's at. Big big chunk of it because of you. Thank you. Thanks. All right, well, that'll wrap us up for this edition of Surveyor Says. We wanted everybody to get an idea of really the hard work that goes on at the board level, because every now and then we hear complaints about the test and this and that, whatever. There's a lot of people that really put a whole bunch of effort into making this test as best as it possibly can. And they're doing it on their own time, and it's just amazing what's been able to put together over the course of several decades, and we look forward to watching it continue to grow. So thank you, gentlemen, and wherever you listen to the podcast, hit that subscribe button, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Surveyor Says, the NSPS Podcast. We would like to thank the Certified Survey Technician Board, consisting of Norm Ellerbrock, Chair, Don Falcon, Vice Chair, Randy Rambo, Ryan Swingley, Nick DeGrudelo, Trish Lund, Ron Torrance, and Bob Moynihan for taking time out of their busy spring business meeting to chat with us about the progress of the program. We would also like to thank the NSPS staff of Sarah Maggi and Trish Milburn for all of the work they put in with CST throughout the year. For more information about the Certified Survey Technician program, please visit cstnsps.com. You've been listening to the Surveyor Says podcast, brought to you by the National Society of Professional Surveyors. If you have any questions about today's episode or any other topic, please email us at info@nsps.us.com, and we are here to help. Visit our website, nsps.us.com, to learn more about our association, the programs we administer and support, our sustaining members, and information about future episodes of Surveyor Says. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, as well as our podcast host, Podbean. And remember, it's a great day to be a surveyor.